Okay, I want to briefly talk to you about disclosed dual agency. Sometimes this can come about. Now, first and foremost, not every state allows disclosed dual agency. I'm talking in this specific example on how we operate as disclosed dual agents in Missouri. Now, if you're watching this in another state, we will be covering the various options that are available for you in your state. So don't panic about that. But sometimes I think it's good for us to just understand how disclosed dual agency works. And I'm going to actually go over to the board now and kind of draw this out for you and show you a typical scenario on how you might see disclosed dual agency. Remember that if we take a listing agreement, so I'm going to put Bob and Sue up here, my good friends Bob and Sue. They're going to be our sellers in this example, and I do not know why my board is doing some strange things there. But I'm going to say that we have broker Mary, and then I'm going to say that I work for Mary. So this is me, this is John, right here. And I'm going to take this listing agreement between Bob and Sue. So when I take the listing agreement between Bob and Sue, we understand that creates this fiduciary obligation, right? Now, we have to remember that this listing agreement that I took is actually between Bob and Sue and Mary. If I were to leave and go somewhere else, that listing stays with broker Mary unless she's going to allow me to take the listing with me. So we understand that that we have this fiduciary obligation. I have this with Bob and Sue. Mary has this with Bob and Sue, and I also have this fiduciary obligation with Mary as an agent that works for Mary. And we could draw other agents into the scenario, but I don't want to get that deep involved into the situation. What I do want to take time to explain to you is, based on what's happening here, how various situations can arise. So I'm going to go back and tell you a story that happened to me just a few years ago, and I've seen this story over and over again. I had taken a brand new listing in the Park Hills area. It was small acreage, really nice home, had been remodeled, just in tip-top shape. It was in the Central School District. Now, I had some buyers that I had entered into a buyer's agency agreement with them. They wanted to buy a home on acreage, but they wanted the Farmington School District. Now, are you with me? I have a new listing with a seller, so I have a client principal, a client agent relationship with the seller on a property in the Central School District. And I've also entered into a buyer's agency agreement with the buyers, but they want Farmington. So we're looking at all of these homes in the Farmington area, and nothing appeals to them. They just don't like anything. And I keep telling them about this house that I just listed in the Central School District. No, we don't want to look at that. I'm like, I really think that you should look at it. It's a nice home. No, don't want to go to Central School District. So after several days of looking at properties, and these were very qualified buyers, it was a good price range, we couldn't find anything. And they needed to buy a home. We're driving back into town after we'd looked at, 9th or 10th property, maybe more than that, and they're very discouraged. And I said again, I'd love for you to go look at this house over in the Central School District. It's empty. I have a key. I really think you would fall in love with this home. And they said, let's go look at it. So we drove over to the property that I have listed. And the minute I crossed the threshold showing them that property, I'm now what? I'm now a disclosed dual agent. The key to Missouri, and this is why you always have to have these consultations with buyers and get that buyer's agency agreement signed as quick as possible, is the minute you perform any of the activities required for a real estate license, if you're going to be a disclosed dual agent, you have to have the signed agreements by all parties prior to performing any activities. Luckily, I had the buyer's agency agreement signed, and of course, I had the seller's agency agreement signed. So in both agreements, I checked the box that both parties would allow me to be a disclosed dual agent, and I explained to them how that worked. And basically, it allows me to be the agent for both parties. The escape clause, I guess you could say, it's not really an escape clause, but the one piece of information that I have to abide by when I'm a disclosed dual agent is that any confidential information I were to come into, I can't tell either party. For example, the buyers say, let's make this offer, John, but if we have to, we'll pay the full price, but let's see if they'll take this offer. I can't tell the seller, remember I'm a disclosed dual agent, and that's confidential information. I can't tell the seller, hey, they'll pay the full price. Now, if I was a typical seller's agent and you worked for the buyer and you gave me that information, I have to tell my client that information. But in this situation, it's confidential information because I'm a disclosed dual agent. And if the seller said, I don't want to take that offer, but let's counter back at this, John, but don't let him get away. I'll take that offer if they won't go with this counter. Confidential information, I can't tell the buyer, who I'm also an agent for. So whenever you're a disclosed dual agent in Missouri, you could still work for both parties, still could collect a commission from both parties as long as everyone knows that. However, you cannot disclose confidential information. Gets a little challenging. Now, the key to all of this is find out from your broker what's in your company policy, because your company agency policy may not allow for disclosed dual agency. Your state may not allow for disclosed dual agency. But I wanted you to know in Missouri, we do allow it, we do offer it, and there's a couple of key things there. Number one, before, underline that word or write it down, before you perform any activities required for a real estate license, you need to have a written agency agreement. So that just means if I had been in the car with my people and they said, yeah, let's go over and look at that property, and I did not have a buyer's agency agreement signed with them, I would have had to have told them, I'm a seller's agent, I work for the seller, and you, unfortunately, will have to be a third party with no representation. That's why it's always so important. Take your time, have these consultations with your buyers in advance, get your buyer's agency signed in advance if your broker allows that. Find out what you can and can't do. Know what's in your agency policy. Know about compensation, as we've talked about, and how you can get paid for that. And then cover all those bases. And when you end up in that same type of scenario or situation that I was in, well, you'll be just fine and you can work as a disclosed dual agent. And by the way, I did write a contract with those buyers on that property, and we did have a successful closing. And yes, I was a disclosed dual agent.